Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Richard Day, and you are listening to the Chiro Business Mojo Podcast. I'm here, I have Dr. Haley alongside, and she recently wrote a blog post that I thought was really good. She sat down and brainstormed and observed and thought through things that we had done and observed in practice and other things that we've heard from other people, and she came up with a great list of 13 elements of what makes a successful chiropractic practice. So we're going to go through those now and let you guys know what we think those are. So do you want to go ahead, Dr. Haley, and introduce the first one?
Before I get to that, I'm going to talk about, in the blog post, I talk about 2 reasons that doctors may not be getting these things right. So the first one is that the doctor just doesn't even realize that they need to be doing it, and that it's how critical it is to them for their success. And then the second reason is that they know, but they're not doing it. Either they've gotten lazy, or they're pretending it doesn't exist, or, you know, for whatever reason, they know they should, but they're not. Sometimes
I think they just get comfortable. Maybe they're not lazy, but you get someone who's making enough money and they're about as busy as they want to be, and you get lazy. You
or
start
maybe
slacking.
You've handed it off and somebody didn't catch the baton quite right. Maybe.
Yeah.
So these are the ideal elements that a perfect practice would have. And if you're a student, pay attention, because you can nail these off the bat. If you're 1 to 2 year, 3 years out, you might be missing something. Maybe you haven't, quite caught that system right. Then, reach out to us, or, Google that maybe.
So this first one caught my eye right away, and I like it a lot because I have a background in retail sales, and being able to say yes is a big deal when you're in sales. And we are not in sales directly as chiropractors, but there are elements of persuasion that we have in common with salespeople. And why don't you go ahead and introduce this first one?
Sure, I knew you'd like this one. It's called frictionless systems.
Yes.
Yes. Yes to everything.
Yeah, when I was in sales, there's something called the momentum of yes. And that is, let's say a patient calls you up and says, "Are you open?" Yes. "Do you treat headaches?" Yes. "Do you take my insurance?" Yes. "Do you have openings for a practice or for a new patient today?" Yes. "I'm on my way. Could I come now?" Yes. I mean, each one of these yeses, according to the experts, you develop a momentum. You build on that. Now, obviously, in the real world, we can't say yes to everything, but any no or stop or is a maybe, and that's a point of friction. And people want easy. They want fast. They want convenience. And if you can create frictionless systems for that, then you're going to get a lot closer to having that patient come in. And then once they're in, it won't be a hassle to get treated and get out of your practice.
Yeah. So the moment they answer the phone, you get them in. Their questions are answered. They schedule. They're given instructions on paperwork, and all is smooth. Same for when they come in for the appointment. The wait time is minimal, the exam and treatment are quick but thorough, and they're rescheduled for the next appointment. And then also on the back end, you are submitting their insurance or their billing, and your opening and closing and cleaning procedures are taken care of so that when they come in, it's clean and there's no issue. When they go to dry their hands, there's towels, there's soap. Maintenance, inventory, all of that is taken care of.
Yeah, everything about that patient experience from the moment that they, see your website to the moment they come through your doors, get adjusted, modalities, whatever you do, to the checkout and the rescheduling, frictionless all the way.
So if you've been in practice a while, take note of these frictions that might be happening in your day to day. And how can you take note of them, and then make a plan to put a system in place to ease that friction and keep up with how the practice should be run.
Yeah, is there a bottleneck in the office somehow? Is it part of the process taking too long? There could be little things that you don't even notice. Quick story, I'll never forget. Haley and I were evaluating a practice for purchase, and there was an independent contractor in there, and we were talking to the owner, and I said, do you need to go take care of this patient? And he said, no, that's my independent patient, or my independent contractor's patient. And that patient sat there, and I said, isn't he going to come out and take care of that patient? He said, I don't know what his deal is, but he's very strict on his times, and he won't see anyone 1 minute before their appointment time. And I said, does he have anyone else right now? No. He was proving a point to that patient that he doesn't want you there if you're early. Well, that is a friction point, and for whatever reason, that is, I mean, that's the type of behavior. That's a behavioral thing, obviously, but that person was creating, whether he knew it or not, a unnecessary point of friction in that patient's experience.
And I see this a lot, in Facebook comments that people, someone will come early or someone will come late. And in our practice, we just take them as they come. So if someone's late, we'll take the next person that shows up. And if someone's early, we see them when we're ready. So there's no issue, and there's an ebb and flow, and it all kind of works through, and we get them all in and take care of them, and everyone's happy. Everyone reschedules and move on to the next day. And
to finalize on that, to the degree you can, the answer is yes to your patient questions.
Yeah, and I think you'll see that your stress level will reduce when you can have a frictionless practice, which is nice.
Are these all part of frictionless?
No.
Okay. We'll cut this part out. All right, number 2. This took me a while to figure out because I am organizationally challenged, but be organized.
Yeah, there are 2 reasons offices are disorganized. And one is that they start that way, or they don't start that way, but after a while, nothing gets put back in the right place.
So important, so important. One of the first things we did when we trained a new CA is to show them exactly where the tools they needed to do their job were located. So we had paperwork at that time. We could do it online, of course, but we had patients who would fill it out when they came in, and we had everything organized in a divider, and we always started out the day with 10 copies, and if it ever got low, you needed to make sure those got filled. And if you're going to staple something and there's no staples, or you go to get the face paper isn't readily available. All of these things are simple, but they get in the way of a really streamlined, efficient operation if you're not doing them right.
Yeah, and I think this is where a checklist comes in place. So you can have a checklist for opening up the practice, a checklist for closing, a checklist for verifying patient eligibility. All of those things need to be documented somewhere so that you're staying organized and everyone knows where everything is.
And you may not get that, on day one. Maybe you've been in practice a few years, or maybe you're just starting out. But, I don't have time to write a manual. I remember thinking things like that. It's just me, or it's just Haley and I. Why do I need a manual? And we did. We knew we didn't really need a lot of checklists for ourselves. But that changes the second you get an employee and you want to be able to say, here is my system, and I want you to understand this system. And until they get to know it, they're going to need to follow a guide. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend once you've got a system of organization that you start documenting it.
Yeah, and this might be going in on this Saturday and saying, these are the things I really don't need in the office. You don't need 100 pens. You don't need 3 staplers, unless you have 3 desks. So go in on Saturday, kind of take inventory, take out everything that you don't need, and then leave everything in its place. Have a home for everything.
I want to drill down into the pen thing really quickly, and this is important. It may not seem like a big deal, but if you've got, a place for your pens and there's 100 pens in there, digging for the right pen is wasting valuable time. It's a point of inefficiency, and maybe not once, but you do that 20 times a day. It's just much easier to have the 2 or 3 pins that you do need in there. And that's just an example. If you look out, across all of the things that you do in your office over and over, make sure that they're very efficiently set up and organized.
Yes. So we'll move on to number 3, which is closely related, but it's a little different. And this is just clean. Your office should be clean.
Absolutely must be clean. I know this seems like a no-brainer, and maybe in your office. So, our office in Colorado, we were the cleaning people as well as the doctors. Our office in Kansas City, completely different. There's a cleaning crew that comes in, but they're still dusting and things like that they're not going to do. And if handprints on the windows or the door when you walk in, all of these things make an impression, right? And you're always wanting to make the best impression you can on your patients. And there's an old saying that I read somewhere in an article about the airline industry. And what they said was, if the passenger comes in and the seat is disgusting and the little slot or whatever where you put the barf bag and all the other stuff that's there, the magazines, if that's filthy, the customer thinks, well, then if the inside of the plane isn't cared for and is in this condition, what is the engine looking like? And so the same holds true with our patients. You're making an impression with all these little details. And believe me, I've walked into a practice that we sold. And when I came in after not being there in a few months, I could not believe how the place had I would have spent the entire day cleaning. I would have closed and then reopened, closed for cleaning, and then reopened the next day. And believe me, if I noticed, we get a blind eye. A fresh eye, a new patient coming in, they're going to notice those things. So clean, clean, clean.
And I don't want to steal your thunder because I know this is one of your most precious things that you love. So you need to look at this.
The trash needs to be emptied regularly. Face paper should be changed after a person gets off the table, not right before they get on. Right. Exactly.
You've got to change the face paper after you treat someone. So right as they're leaving the office, you take it off, you throw it in the trash. Nobody ever sees it ever again except for the person that used it.
Yes.
And so the other option is that some people leave it, and then you have the new patient or the next patient comes in and it's a dirty face paper and you change it right before they get on. How does that look to them?
Yeah, I had a patient come in with their child one time, and after the adjustment, she sat up and the little boy said, "Mommy, your face is on the paper." And your other patients, they don't want to see anyone else's face on that paper until theirs goes down. And it seems like a no-brainer, but I've had associates work for me where I come in and there's just oil-stained makeup face paper on everything. And I mention it and they say, well, I change it right before the next person goes on. Yeah, but it looks bad. It's bad optics.
Okay, so number 4 is energy. And we're not like real woo-woo. So it's not about having energy per se, but having
a mood,
an energy that is congruent with you, to your office. There should be you need to, like our office, we have Kansas City paintings and there's there's kids' toys. And so there's this energy to it that is reflective of who we are.
And it's a whole separate podcast, but it starts with the look and feel of your brand, and this comes into the look and feel of your office, which is a brand. I mean, if you look at a McDonald's, they have a logo on the outside, but there's a thing going on inside as well they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, for designers and surveys to come up with what is comforting and makes people want to buy more, eat more, stay longer. So you don't want a color scheme that makes people, that turns them off. The biggest thing is you don't want people who are downers. They bring energy. Your CA brings energy. You bring energy. Yeah. And another story from practice, we had an associate who came in because they had lost a pet the night before, and that was what they were literally cussing about it as they walked in the door. And they brought that energy. And I said, you just can't. You have to leave all of that behind. You can't. Patients are going to pick up on all this negative energy. You need to come in, and you are going to be the bright spot in that patient's day. It just has to be that way. So it has to be in your mind, and so it can be on your patient's mind and your staff as well.
And that energy should be attractive to your ideal patient. So if you are treating kids, you want a very vibrant, kid-friendly, just very carefree attitude type energy to your office, so that when those kids come in, they can feel that they're welcome and that they're in the right place.
Yep, it's working.
All right. So before we move on, we'll recap. So for an elements of a successful chiropractic practice, we have frictionless systems. It's organized and clean, and there's the appropriate energy for your mood, for what's going on in that practice.
So I can do all of those. Let me tell you where I can sometimes struggle, and that is in being thorough. So Haley, tell us about that.
So once you set up your systems, you need to follow them, and you need to thoroughly follow your systems and complete your tasks as they pertain to office procedures and patient care. Taking shortcuts, being lazy, not following through, those are all reasons offices fail. You need to take notes, keep a log. Maybe you have, for us, that was, we kept a log for the x-ray, the processor, to make sure that it was cleaned thoroughly, every 6 or 8 weeks that we did. So if you're keeping logs or you're taking notes, you need to make sure you're keeping with that.
Yeah, and it's an easy thing to do. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to different people in practice, and I say, what is your system for doing that? How do you remind yourself? And it can be as easy as saying, hey, Siri, or whatever your phone responds to. Set some sort of a reminder for you to do that. Set a calendar reminder in, your Google Calendar, whatever it happens to be. But whatever works for you, but there's got to be a way, and I do the same thing because I have struggled with being thorough in certain things. I just develop a checklist and make sure I go through the checklist, and it seems like I shouldn't have to do that, but I've realized that I do need that, at least initially, to make sure I'm doing it correctly and thoroughly.
And maybe for this, you need an accountability partner, because Rich is not gonna hit it every day, and so he'll come home and I'll say, okay, did you do the payment summary report, or whatever it may be. You need to make sure that someone is keeping you on task.
Yes, and yes. And in case you didn't notice, that's Haley in my world. She's keeping me on target. But it's a good thing. Someone needs to do it. And we have a really good synergy that way, where she keeps me in check and I keep her in check on in her areas that could be better. And so if you don't have that, look around for someone who can do that for you, or
And honestly, this isn't the fun area. I mean, this is not, oh my God, I'm in practice and I love this, printing this report every night. No. But it is what keeps it going. It is what gives you momentum. It is what makes it stress-free, because you're staying on top of your systems. And when you stay on top of your systems, everything works as it's supposed to, and then you don't freak out when things don't add up, or when, it's not working out towards the end of the month. If you have systems in place, you will hit those targets. Which brings us to number 6, and that is goals.
You have to have goals. So, of course, when you first open, the goal is to get patients and not go out of business. And those are pretty easy. But once you hit that, the goal shifts to becoming profitable and stable. And then after that, it really becomes all about growth. And then maybe, if you continue to grow, maybe the goal becomes to get an associate so you can get more of your time or make more money. And then maybe towards the end of your career, it is to have an exit strategy. But you need to maybe begin with the end in mind, right? You want to map those things out.
Yeah, I think one of the most, honestly, I think right now, if you do not have a vision for where you want your life to be in the next 5 or 10 years, you need to take a day, at least. If you have not gotten that far, you need to take a day. You need to think about these things. Where do you want your life to be in 10 years? Where do you want your practice to be 5 years, 3 years, 1 year? And in setting that vision and making those goals are the only way that you can reach them, because you have an idea of, it's a blueprint for where you're going. And you can't go anywhere without a blueprint.
And while we're talking about goals, I think it's important to realize a couple things. Because first of all, well, how do I know where I'm going to be in 3 years, 5 years, let alone 10 years? Those are all good questions. It's like forecasting the weather. It gets a little, more difficult the further you project out. But it's still, at least when it comes to trying to have an overall goal, it's still worthwhile to put something out there. And then the other thing is that this doesn't mean that you can't change if things change in your life. And remember, we're always in motion and making changes. And the term I hear in the business world for this is pivot. Companies have to be able to pivot. That means stop what they're doing and turn and go a different direction based on new information that they've received. So that's fine. You're not locked into these goals. And the other thing is, by the same token, if you don't hit a goal, but things have changed, maybe you've changed your goals. And so you might be disappointed, at least initially, but know that the target can move. It can change, and you always want to reassess those goals. And don't feel bad about the ones that you didn't necessarily hit, because things are always, that the target is always moving, and you're always going to be updating that goals list.
Yeah, and I think, like for Michael Phelps, does he just swim for fun? No, he has a goal. And every day is working towards that goal. And so that takes us to the next one, which is plans. So once you set your goals, you want to have plans to reach the goals.
Yeah, and so now you know where you're going. You've set a goal. And you have to make a plan. Well, think about it, when you're, using Google Maps or whatever, and you want to go to Fort Lauderdale, let's say. Well, then you need the path that's going to take you there. You're not going to go the opposite direction. And so you start thinking, what are the immediate things I could do to get there, and laying out a strategy to get you there. And maybe you only know the first 3 to 5 steps. That's fine. As you go through those, you can start setting the next phase of what the goals you're going to want to hit are. And I mean, if you think about it, the analogy to the care plans that we set our patients up on, right? We have phase 1, and we've got those acute care goals, and then there's phase 2 and phase 3. So those are going to, as you move through it, you don't have to know all the phases right now. Just get phase 1 figured out of whatever you're doing, and you can set those in as you go.
Yeah, and your treatment is the plan towards the goal.
Right.
So, I like that. Good job.
Thanks.
And so for us, we have quarterly goals, and we try to set one big event per quarter, and then a couple events that we'll go to per quarter in order to maintain relationships, build our networking, that kind of thing. But the one big event, and then one a year at our practice. So for when we were in Erie, it was having Santa in our office, or having a chamber event, or hosting another event in our office. So we always wanted to have something like that on the books that we were working towards, that we knew people would come to, that we wanted to have invites for, and really have a good build up for. So if you don't have something like that on your books for the rest of the year, go make a plan. Contact the chamber, contact your BNI group, contact the Rotary, and set up a talk, set up a ribbon cutting, set up something to bring people into your office, to invite people in. Yeah,
really she's describing a marketing calendar, but put that together. Maybe your goals are, I'm going to do 5 social media posts this week, and we're going to do a talk, and, in February we're going to talk about whatever that month is, something related to healthcare. But doing something like that, and then hitting each of those goals at the appropriate times is a great thing to set up if you haven't already done that, as an example of goal setting.
Okay, so I'm going to take us back through them. So we have frictionless systems, office that is organized and clean, has a great energy to it. We follow systems thoroughly. We have goals and the plans to reach those goals. And the next one.
Checks and Checks and balances.
Which Rich will not talk about very much because I am the one who does this in our practice.
I was going to say that when I saw this on the list, that I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm sure you do.
So checks and balances are what we have, are systems that we have in place to make sure everything is going and working properly. And that is where I come into our practice. But it's important because you need to stay on top of the accounting and your finances and insurance billing and make sure that all of those things are being run properly and you're staying on top of them so that you don't have claims that are going to be denied or you don't have patients that you're not submitting your Optum forms for, that kind of thing. So checks and balances to make sure that everything is running the way it should.
Yeah, if you've got a CA and they're doing some billing work for you and you're never checking their work, that could be a problem. How do you know that they're doing it correctly? How do you know that they're not leaving money on the table or even worse, taking advantage of you? So there's a lot of places that you want to make sure that there are checks and balances so that it's just part of a system. It's part of being efficient and running a business. So think about what you have going, and if you have checks and balances, and if you see anything missing, now's the time to change that.
Yeah, and patients are going to rely. I mean, checks and balances are in every business, and patients are going to rely on you that if you say they paid $50 cash on a certain date, that's what they paid. And if you're not checking that daily and monthly, then you're not sure. So when someone calls you and they have a question about it, you are not going to be able to follow through on that, or you're not going to even know. Whereas in our practice, we do have checks and balances. And so we know when someone calls and says, no, there's no way I paid cash that day, or I didn't pay, or, that we know that what we did was very thorough and that we made the correct checks and balances to make sure that our systems were right. So
these next two, I like them. I think they go together, but we're going to start with the first one, and that is core values.
Yeah, you want to know what your practice stands for. And this is how patients are going to describe your practice to their friends, their neighbors, when they go to refer to you. You need to have a core value. Ours was that we treat patients the way we would want our family to be treated if we recommended them or referred them into another doctor. And so everyone knew that we were going to give them the kind of care that we would give our family members.
You're also going to attract in other people that share your core values as well. That's what we found. I mean, that's just how that works. People are looking for their tribe, and if you stand for a certain set of values and then you do a good job of letting everyone know that, you're going to attract those people in, and of course they're going to be the ones who turn around and tell other people who share those same values about you, your practice, and coming in. And this ties into the next part, which is clear branding. And that's how you're going to message this out to the public, what your values are.
Yeah, and this should be very clear and concise and consistent so that it builds the raving fans that you want for your service that are going to go to their friends, to their neighbors, and tell them, hey, if you are going anywhere, you have got to go to my guy or girl.
Yep, you're always auditioning for the job of chiropractor, and we can tell ourselves over and over, people shouldn't judge, but the fact is that they are. They're always sizing you up. They want to know if they're in the right place. Are you worth the money? And if you can communicate those values, your values to them, that they are in the right place and you are worth that money, through everything from the way we talked about earlier, the energy of your office, the website, all of it, that all needs to be tied into your core values and expressed through your branding.
Yeah, and I wrote in this blog, a better brand will win over a better price with most patients. So a lot of new graduates or new in practice chiropractors that we talk to, they're very concerned about their price. And I feel that if they were more concerned about their brand and what they are bringing to their brand, then the price is not most people aren't going to talk about it. As long as you're within normal limits, it doesn't matter what your price is, because your brand speaks volumes to those people, and they want to see you, not the cheapest person. We once had a patient come in, and she had read all of our reviews, but we didn't take her insurance. And she was really upset because she really wanted to come to our practice, but she had to go down the street because she wanted to use our insurance. So, typically people will choose the brand over that, I even think.
Yeah, she ended up coming to us, right? Because she decided we were worth it. She had not such a great experience there and said, I don't care if they take my insurance. I'm going over here where it's more expensive to us so I can get the experience that I want.
Which I feel like was very intentional. I mean, I felt like, for us, we wanted to have the brand, and that people would want to come to us and not be so concerned about our price really from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one.
Low overhead. You hear location, location, location when it comes to starting a business. And while that's important, I would say it's low overhead, low overhead, low overhead.
Well, and location doesn't even make this list, so obviously I didn't even think about it. But yes, for sure, low overhead. I mean, and this could, it isn't for every practice type, but definitely should be something you consider from the beginning. I know for independent contractors, they're saving a lot by going in with someone else. And I think low overhead is, for us, when we were looking at places to open, we did not want to have to afford for that. We didn't want to have to get that many patients in. We would rather have a low overhead and, and a better lifestyle for our family than to work the hours or see the patients necessary to pay and the overhead that it would take to be in a very visible strip mall or larger office building.
Yeah, there's a formula that I'm not going to talk about here because it doesn't translate, well to audio, but figure out what your overhead per patient is. And, if $25 you're paying out and your average collection per patient is $50, then you've got a 50% overhead per patient when they come in. And the higher, obviously, that your overhead is, the more people you have to see or the higher prices have to be able to still make a profit on top of that. So you can't control how many people who walk in the door, and you can't control, if Mother Nature decides to give you a snow day and you have to close your office for some reason, but you can control to the best of your ability a lot of your overhead. So if you haven't already, look at any way you can save on your overhead or reduce costs. And if you're starting out, really consider the return on investment of any piece of equipment you buy for your office. There's a lot of things you buy that may not really translate into more patients or higher collections per patient. So maybe it's something that you don't actually need.
And so that takes us to the next one, which is we think you should have a mentor or a mastermind, somebody who can kind of talk you through a process or a system or a problem that you might be having. But you can be held and at the same time, they hold you accountable to what you should be doing. Are you taking Thursdays and Fridays off? Maybe you should work a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a paid coach or anything like that, but someone that you can trust to give you good advice. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but I'll tell you some ways that I think are definitely not great ways. Well, I guess it's not definitely right. Here's I'll go ahead and say this. You can go on a social media Facebook group and say, hey, what does everyone think about this? And you might get 30 responses. And I bet you 20 of them will be different, or 25. And there's a core group who probably are right about something. But it's really hard when you don't know to figure out who has got it right and who doesn't. And I have noticed that a lot of people are not shy about rendering an opinion, even if they have no idea. They'll say, I'm not sure, but I think that Medicare allows blah, blah, blah. Well, that's nothing that you can you can't go make a plan on this thing that someone told you on Facebook that they think. That's just one example. It doesn't have to be Medicare, but you need to find a qualified mentor. It's different than what you heard from the group on Facebook.
For sure. And stay tuned because I have a podcast labeled Things You Shouldn't Ask on Facebook.
Good. I'm looking forward to that.
But for sure, you need to know your source. I mean, this is elementary. Like, I remember when I was in English at Pepperdine and it was, who's writing the story? Where are you getting your information from? And when you ask in a Facebook group, I saw once someone asked a question and the first 5 answers were completely wrong. And you just never know. And so you want to make sure that the person you're getting your information from is a reliable source. And a lot of times the answer is ask your state association. And then there's other people, and you need to know that the source that you're going to also, what are they best suited for? Because I've had mentors and they may not be able to answer a Medicare question, but they can answer a treatment question. So I think it's just knowing, what you can ask that person and who you need to go to when you need to ask, a type of question.
And something to keep in mind with mentors is there's some things that are real black and white. Can I do this or can't I? Like maybe it's a compliance question. And there's a lot of black and white, and sometimes there's gray. For example, some things are state dependent. Can I give a time of service discount? Well, in some states you can, but in others you can't. And in some states it's 5%, in others it's 15%. So that's it, and it depends. But there's another big depends, and it's sometimes for other questions that aren't black and white, it depends on you. It depends on what you can do and what you're capable of. What is right for me isn't right for you, isn't going to be right for the next person. But a mentor should also, if they don't know themselves, be able to point you in the right direction of someone who's an authority, but they should also be a good sounding board for you to help you discover you a little bit. Is this right for you? And help you talk and think through that process before you make a decision. So our next one is...
This takes us to lucky number 13, which is... social media presence.
So the future is social media. And I know some of the docs who have been around a while maybe aren't on there or don't see the point or maybe don't need it. But there's a lot of value in social media. Not that you're going to run an ad and get a bunch of new patients from it, but it can help create a conversation that you can be part of. And believe me, you want to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and so this is something I feel like we did really well when we were in Colorado. We were very consistent with our approach to Facebook and Instagram, and we knew when to both boost posts and get a considerable amount of likes and to get the notice of our practice in the town that we were in.
Yeah, it's a way to be in the conversation. And, I've seen good and bad social media posts, not just from chiropractors, but from a lot of business owners and quite frankly, just individuals. But when it comes to a business, you want to be engaging. You want to give people something to talk about, something they can relate to, and maybe have a conversation about. You want to ask a question, but because that can get more engagement. But the point is you need a presence of some sort on there for a couple of reasons. One of the things that Google looks for when it's deciding whether or not you're important is, are you linking to anything? Is anything linking to you? Well, if you can link to your Facebook post, which links to your Instagram, that pass-through clicking ability is one of the things that Google Analytics looks for. So it helps you be found in a number of ways beyond just posting information to people who know about you or don't know about you. It helps to grow the awareness.
Yeah, and I think, some people are trying to hide from this and they have their name different than their real name. And, it just starts to come people are looking for your practice, and then they want to link from your practice to you, and then to your website, or, to see that you're a normal, likable human being that has, normal things, or something that draws them to you.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is core values.
Yeah,
they're going to get to know you through what they see in that social media presence that you have and that you're cultivating, and then they'll have an idea of what you're about, your core values, and if they relate to them, that might be the beginning of a conversation. Or let's say somebody says you should go see my doctor. Dr. Day is really great. And then that person goes and does a little Googling or Facebook stalking and finds Dr. Day and says, oh, yeah, he does seem great. Or, hopefully that's what they say.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems wacky. And I think 10 years ago it was very creepy. But today it's just common. And, if I go to find a dentist for my family, then I'm going to look at the dentist website or Facebook page, and I'm going to read reviews, and I'm going to maybe even try to link to her personal and see that she has a family, or, whatever people do, they're looking for people that they feel like they connect to. So I think you need a social media presence. Your practice needs a social media presence, and it needs to be something that people can stumble upon and feel good about, that you're their chiropractor.
All right. So we ready to recap these?
Sure.
Okay.
So we have, the first one is frictionless systems. Yes, yes, yes.
You want to be organized, definitely organized. And part of that is you want to also be clean. Your place should be tidy. You should be ready to go at all times.
Yes. And you want to have a good energy about your practice that speaks to your ideal patient. And you want to be thorough about the systems that are going on in your practice.
You want to set goals. You want to have not only marketing goals, but what are your personal goals? Where do you want to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years out?
And what are the plans that are going to get you to reach those goals?
Who are your checks and balances? Who does that for you? Do you need that? Yes, you do. So make sure you have those systems in place.
And do you have core values to your practice? Is it something that people would notice off the bat? And is it how they would describe your practice to their friends and family?
Right. And have you given them, through your branding, a window, some insight into those core values to help people know what you're all about and be able to either come in as new patients or refer new patients?
And you want to keep your overhead low, so you can take home the money.
Do you have a mastermind or a mentor or someone who has a qualified opinion, a trustworthy opinion that can help guide you with the big picture and even the day-to-day stuff?
And do you have a social media presence? Can someone find you with a Facebook search or a Google search so that they can see who you are and all those other great things about you, your branding, your values, and who you seek to serve?
So there you have it, 13 ideas, things that you should know, which we think are the elements of a successful chiropractic practice.
As you are working through this list, if you feel like there are things if you're a student and you feel like you have no idea where to start with these things, I recommend the Chiro Planner, or even joining the foundation, which is our library of resources for those that are looking to start a practice in the next 3 to 6 months. Or if you've already been in practice, you don't have a mentor or mastermind, and you really want some extra help, set up a strategy call. We have a link on our lifestylepracticebuilders.com website that you can set up a strategy call. We will work through some of your issues, give you a strategy for the next 3 months, and give you some insight as to how you can turn some of these things around and get that momentum that you need to be in practice and succeeding and doing well. So your success is our goal, and we're here for you.